Today we're reviewing this petite plastic princess, the RIG Nacon Pro Compact. It is a wired Xbox One Series and Windows 10 PC controller that retails for $40 US. We are going to test and review this controller based on 15 categories. We're going to measure the out-of-the-box thumbstick dead zones and check the average error based on range of motion. Then we're also going to check the input delay in milliseconds via a polling rate checker and see how susceptible this controller is to being overclocked. Then we're going to test the Dolby Atmos Virtual Surround, which this does have built-in support for, so any headset plugged into that 3.5mm headphone jack will automatically activate Dolby Atmos. Then we're going to grab a mop out of the broom closet and clean up with the pros, cons, and where to buy this thing. And I'll smash down the gavel with a verdict. And spoiler, this controller is guilty of being a good value. That generally holds a sentence of 4 to 5 years on my controller wall. Without further ado, you know what to do. Let's controller review. I'll see you in my chambers. Now, the key feature or main selling factor of this controller is that it is a compact controller designed for gamers with small hands. We are going to wrap the soft measuring tape around her hips later to see if she's a petite plastic princess or a bulging behemoth. We are also going to put it on the scale, as even though this is a petite or compact controller, it might be relatively dense and have a good weight in the hand. Now, as mentioned, this is $40 and can be purchased on Amazon, the Nacon and RIG websites. RIG is an offshoot of the French company Nacon that's been making gaming peripherals for 41 years, since 1981, and you can also buy this at Best Buy, Walmart, and any major vendors. If the controller wasn't here winking me in the face, it would be in this cardboard cutout here with this little plastic bag covering it. Very basic packaging, but you really wouldn't expect any laser cut foam or anything with a $40 controller. You have your documentation inside of this plastic bag. So as for included accessories, you really don't have a whole heck of a lot. You don't have a detachable cable as it is permanently connected. This is a 9.8 foot or 3 meter cable. It is braided. Whoa, easy there, sweetheart. It does also have a Velcro tie back. It is one of the ones that stays connected. And it does also have a breakaway. So if one of your pets or children or drunk friends trip over the cable, it won't rip it out of your console. It'll just attach at the breakaway. That was a feature on the Xbox 360, and I really did enjoy it. I didn't really enjoy playing wired, period. But if you are going to play wired, it is a nice feature. You do also have some stickers over here because we all know this adds frames per second to your rig and cuts down the 0 to 60 time on your car. Go ahead and put these on the rear bumper. You have the regulatory warning information telling you not to swing this thing around overhead by the cord like a flail and hit your best friend in the kneecap. As for a warranty, you're getting 1 year in North America and 2 years in other parts of the world such as Africa, Asia, Australia, Europe, and New Zealand. If I claim I live in those parts of the world, can I get the 2 years? Because that's a really good warranty. 1 year is not bad either. 2 years is double. Captain Obvious to the rescue. You have your instruction pamphlet right here. Not very in-depth. The only instruction you're getting is going to be right here in the top left. And then if you've been hitting the Rosetta Stone and you're fluent in other languages, you do have other options here as well. It is literally stripped down, bare bones. It just says, hey, plug it into a USB port, hold it in your hand, hit the buttons, more or less. Then this card is incredibly important. This is telling you that you can activate Dolby Atmos, which is an application in the Windows Store that you can install on Xbox as well as Windows 10 and 11 PCs. And you automatically will activate Dolby Atmos. However, you do have to have a headphone connected via that 3.5mm headphone jack, or it won't recognize it as an Atmos device. If you have any issues, they do have 24/7 customer support and a YouTube channel with some tutorials on it and stuff. As for the quirks and features of this little controller, as I peel off these protective stickers here, which are protecting that piano black on the top, Piano black looks fantastic, but it does collect micro scratches and fingerprints like nobody's business. There's really only two interesting quirks or features about this controller. The first one is that it is designed specifically for small-handed individuals, so it is actually molded to be a small controller. The second one being that this is a $40 controller that has Dolby Atmos supported in that 3.5mm headphone jack. That's pretty impressive because just an activation key alone for Dolby Atmos is $20. Well, usually $15, on sale for $12.74 right now. That's a really weird price. $12.74. Now, weighing this is going to be relatively interesting because it does have a cord permanently attached, so we're going to get a measurement with the cable off of the scale and then also with the cable as well. Not that you're really feeling the weight of the cable while you're gaming unless you have it all bundled up in your hand. 6.9 ounces. Let's get the cable on there as well. Okay, low battery. Good, good. 11 ounces. So the controller itself, you're looking at about 6.9 to 7 ounces. It's pretty damn light. As for the dimensions, wrapping my measuring tape around her, at the widest point, which is going to be the bottom of the shell here, 14 inches around. Now you're looking at about 6 inches wide, 4 inches from the top of the shell to the bottom, and about 1 inch of depth. As for the grip thickness at its widest point, it's a 5-incher. I will also have the manufacturer's dimensions right here on screen. So the dimensions and weight are not on the manufacturer website, which I find weird. They have other tech specs on here, such as the cable length in centimeters, but for a controller that is designed to be compact and more ergonomically comfortable for people with small hands, it is almost crucial to have the measurements somewhere on the website. But over here, our good friend Google says 8.46 by 6.38 by 2.68 inches, and the item weight of 7 ounces, which is directly aligned with my testing, which is about 6.9 to 7 ounces, depending on if the cable is putting pressure on the controller. As for the ergonomics, it's actually very comfortable for average North American hands, I guess you could call it. I'm about 5'11", have long, gangly pianist fingers over here, and it feels comfortable for me. You will notice that your pinky kind of overlaps and wraps onto itself, but it's very comfortable because it does have this molded rear shell on the grips, and also you do have a little bit of plastic texturing. It's not rubberized or anything, but you do have some textured plastic over here to help you get a grip. Now, I do wish that this controller was actually slightly smaller. Now, I do understand that they still have to fit the internals, the printed circuit board, as well as the rubber plungers for the membrane switches, the thumbstick modules, etc. However, if they could make this even smaller, that would be awesome, because I know there's a lot of gamers with very tiny hands, and this is a fantastic option for them, but I think they could shave down just a few millimeters in this top section right here. It feels great down here in the grips, but if they could bring everything slightly closer together, I think that would be awesome. But everything rests naturally where it should be. Bumpers, triggers, face buttons, analog sticks, everything feels like it's in a good position. As for build quality, fit, and finish, this thing does feel incredibly durable, especially for a $40 controller. There's no creaks and moans and groans as I try and give it the flex test. Plastics don't feel necessarily cheap and chintzy, especially for the price point, so that's good. As for a quality control reputation, I've never really heard of any horror stories of Nacon or rig controllers crapping out. Generally, it's things like the Microsoft Elite and SCUF controllers that are notorious in the controller community all over forums and whatnot and YouTube. I haven't really heard anything negative about these controllers breaking, so that's good. And if they do, you have a pretty good warranty. 1 year in the US and 2 year overseas. It'd be pretty sweet if they could extend that 2-year warranty to the States. There's probably a lot of red tape and corporate codes and tax stuff they got to work around to get a decent warranty for us in the States, because consumer electronic goods in the States generally aren't really well protected with warranties. But they're trying, and I admire that. As for the D-pad, face buttons, share and options buttons, Xbox home button, basically everything on the front of the controller minus the analog sticks. The D-pad does feel slightly mushy. It doesn't feel as tactile and clicky as the Revolution X Nacon controller we just tested. Also, it is freakishly small. I can actually cover the entire D-pad with my thumb, and I have relatively skinny thumbs. The share and options buttons feel fantastic. They're in a good place, and they're also pretty large and raised from the front shell, so they are easy to hit. Face buttons I absolutely love. I said this on the Revolution X controller. They are larger, they're oversized face buttons, so they're bigger. Plus, they are also flat, not rounded like standard Xbox buttons. They're still rounded ever so slightly, but you can hit them a lot cleaner, and also they are a much more grippy surface area than those slick, glossy buttons on a standard Xbox controller. And also, since this is a small controller, this would actually be great for fighting games, because I can cover all 4 of the face buttons with my thumb and then just do roll-off combos and whatnot. You also have a share button here, which will work on the Xbox One as well as the Series with the latest update. So instead of having to hit the Xbox button, then a concurrent face button to save a screenshot or video clip, you can just hit the share button, hold it down for a video clip, maybe double tap to start a screen recording, send that footage to your local esports team and try and get recruited. As for the analog sticks, they do feel very good. You get a nice resistance. They also have a nice tight dead zone. You do have anti-friction rings, so you will glide along smooth plastic rather than the rough front shell when you are at full lock. Clicking down L3 and R3 feels very good. The only thing I will say, they are using the same rubber compound that they use in the Revolution X controller, which is relatively slick rubber. Maybe it'll break down over time with just the natural oils of your hand and also heating up from long gaming sessions, but these are relatively slippery, and I would recommend putting on some kind of a thumbstick cap. You cannot use control freaks on these. You could probably jerry rig them or slam them on there, but it's going to damage the thumbstick caps. According to the Control Freaks website as well as forums online, Control Freaks are not supported on these thumbsticks. However, there are tons of generic third-party slip-on caps that are universal and will work with these to give you a little bit more height and also more grip. So in Windows controller properties, I'm not noticing any dead zones for the left or right analog sticks. All buttons are registering. And as you can see from that point of view hat box, I'm getting pretty good response for diagonal inputs on the D-pad as well. Awesome. Same thing with the Nacon Revolution X controller. These have virtually no dead zones out of the box. We're looking at a 0.00002% dead zone, which is freakishly small. Awesome. Let's test the circularity. Jesus Christ. Nacon makes some damn good thumbstick modules. We're getting a 0.0 average error out of circularity. For a point of reference, generally Switch Pro controllers have about 30% average error, and Sony DualSense controllers for the PS5 are anywhere between 5 and 15%. So this is really good. As for the triggers, they actually feel pretty good. They are slightly shorter than a standard Xbox controller, so if you do play a lot of racing games, you won't be able to modulate the throttle and brake quite as easily. And there are no trigger stops, so you're still getting a full pull in shooting games. As for the bumpers, they actually feel really, really good. They are tactile, clicky, and also molded in a very ergonomic position to where hitting them is very comfortable. As for rear paddles or rear buttons, this controller does not have them. However, I will say if they made a compact Pro version, well, this is actually called the Pro, but maybe the compact Elite or Deluxe or whatever they want to call it, that did have trigger locks as well as remappable rear buttons, this would be an awesome controller for small-handed individuals that want to compete in an esports situation. I'm going to take you inside Project Zero, that's the name of my PC by the way, so we can finish out this video with the pros, cons, verdict, as well as the software suite for this bad boy. On the Microsoft Store, this is the application that you are going to install on your Xbox One, Series Console, or Windows PC. It's Pro Compact by Nacon. Only 4 ratings for an average of 2 stars. Not great, but I will give my personal opinion on the app when I use it. It's only about 12 megabytes, so a relatively small file. First thing you want to do with any new electronics, gear, controllers included is update to the latest firmware. I am not able to use my mouse or keyboard for anything, or controller. What is going on here? Won't close either, huh? Let's force a shutdown. All right, I'm going to unplug it and plug it back in. There we go. That fixed it. Wow, that was... I could see how a user would be turned off by not being able to use the application initially. Unplug it, replug the controller if that seemed to fix the issue. Let's update it. An update is available. Yes, please. So I still have absolutely no mouse or keyboard support with this application. You have to use the controller. Shoot. And it looks like if I try and use the mouse or keyboard, it makes the controller no longer work at all. So I'm going to unplug again, plug it back in, and it automatically pops up asking me if I want to exit the application. No, I don't, but it does work now. So the user experience of this application is not as smooth as the Revolution X Pro controller that I just tested from Nacon, which is weird because it looks cosmetically almost identical, but it does not perform the same. Customize your controller. So very in-depth application, just like on the Rev X, you can remap all of your buttons here. Okay, the application just froze again. Awesome. Let's unplug the controller and plug it back in. So you can remap the buttons on the front of your controller. Press Y, it'll flip it around to the back side. So the instruction manual does not explain whatsoever what that button on the back does. However, I'm going to go ahead and take the initiative and say that in its green position, that is for Xbox, and when it's in blue, that's for PC use. It will work either way because obviously a Windows PC has support for Xbox controllers, but maybe you'll get more compatibility and functionality by putting it into the blue mode. You can kind of see it's kind of a muted matte blue. And there's lime green over there. So pressing the right bumper, it will take you over to the left analog stick. You do have different response curves, which I think is an awesome feature. And you can also set your dead zone over here. So what I recommend you do is put it on its lowest possible value, which is going to be 0. And then if you notice you're getting stick drift where it's registering inputs when you're not touching the analog sticks or thumbsticks, then you can bump it up from there. Now you can also set dead zones for triggers. So if you're playing first-person shooters or racing games or beat 'em ups, you can customize to your heart's desire. And then over here in advanced settings, all you have is vibration. Invert the left and right analog sticks because there's probably 1 or 2 psychos in the world that like to do that. And then this is a really cool feature is you can actually set the D-pad to where it will register all 8 directions, so diagonal, or just a 4-way D-pad. So maybe you're playing some retro games or something. I'm sure there's some use case scenario for this where you want to have a 4-way D-pad. So that's pretty cool that you have that choice. Now, I'm not a tremendous fan that you have to use a separate software application from their other controller that I just tested yesterday. It would be nice if all of their models of controller could be controlled under the same software suite or application, because if you own multiple Nacon controllers, you don't want to have 3-4 applications installed for each of them. Okay, we're going to run a 4,000 sample for the polling rate. Same exact thing as the Revolution X controller. We're getting an average of about 3.9 milliseconds or so, and the polling rate is locked at 250 hertz out of the box. Let's see how she responds to being overclocked. It is an Xbox controller, so it probably won't make much of a difference. It might make it slightly more consistent, but it's really not going to do too much for the input delay. As you can see, not being filtered, default polling rate, which is 250 hertz, for around an estimated 4 milliseconds of input delay, which is exactly what we saw on the polling rate checker. Overclocking, shall we? Install service. Yep. Filter on device, install service. Yep, unplug, replug her back in. Oh, I tried to unplug it from the controller. She's permanently affixed. I gotta unplug it over here at the tower and plug her back in. 1000 hertz polling rate for an estimated 1 millisecond of input delay. However, it is a licensed Xbox controller, so that probably won't take effect because the polling rate is locked. Never hurts to try, you know, trust but verify, I've always said. Maybe a little bit more consistent in actual gameplay, 4 milliseconds of input delay, which isn't bad. It's not bad at all, actually. A little bit lower, about a 3.9. And as you can see, the polling rate is still locked at that 250 hertz, even though we did overclock it with 1000 hertz. Xbox controllers are polling rate locked. Now, as for testing the Dolby Atmos virtual surround, if you come down here to your toolbar in the bottom right and right click on the speaker icon, you will see no spatial sound available options, which means that you can't use virtual surround sound technologies. But if I plug some headphones into the bottom of this 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, two things are going to happen. It is going to default my audio output to headphones, Xbox controller, and now you will have spatial sound options available. Dolby Atmos is selected by default. You can also use Windows Sonic, which is baked into Windows 10 as well as Xbox consoles. So if you have a headset that doesn't support any virtual technologies such as THX or Dirac or Dolby Atmos, you'll always be able to use Windows Sonic. So coming over here to the Dolby website, this is the Atmos Visualizer Music. It is a demonstration on their website. And keep in mind, I am using a headset that does not have Dolby Atmos supported. It does not have drivers tuned for Dolby Atmos, so I can fully test that this controller is pushing Dolby Atmos virtual surround sound in a headset that really wasn't meant for it. Now, these dots are where the sound sources are coming from, and if you want to be able to hear and feel an actual difference, clicking on stereo will just take you back to a 2.1 stereo spread, and then you click Dolby Atmos and you are engulfed with sound. Oh, stereo, disgusting. Get it out of my face. There we go. I feel like I'm in the sound. I'm inside of it. So if you close your eyes and let it play for a second, this is a fun test that I like to do. Try and pinpoint where sound is coming from and then pause. Front left. Boom. Yep, also off to my right, of course. Some of those ad-libs to this rap song are behind me. Pretty sweet. So as for the pros, cons, and verdicts, we'll start with the cons because there is less of those. I would like if this was even slightly smaller. I understand this is labeled as a compact controller, but if they could shave down the center part a couple of millimeters to bring everything a little bit closer together. The thumbsticks, these face buttons, bring them in a little bit more. I think that'd be awesome. I also wish this came with a detachable cable. I understand that this is going to be a wired-only controller because this is in a $40 price point, but if they could include a detachable USB-C cable, that's good for a couple of reasons. The main one would be if the cable gets chewed up by your dog, or you trip over it and it breaks, or it just gets worn out over time, you can just detach it and change out a modular cable instead of having to buy a new $40 controller. Now for the pros. Ergonomically, this is a very comfortable controller even for my hands, so I would imagine for somebody with smaller hands, this would fit absolutely perfectly. And in that aspect, this is a no-brainer for me to recommend because there are very few controllers for small-handed individuals. There's a lot of controllers. In fact, I made an entire video of controllers for big-handed individuals, but this is like the only one designed for small hands. I know a lot of PC controller players are using things like PlayStation 2 and 3 controllers because they were smaller and they fit their hands better, and now they have a more modern option with a share button and actually good thumbsticks. Speaking of thumbsticks, that is a huge pro. There is 0 dead zones out of the box and a 0% average error rating, which is very good. Also, the input delay out of the box is around 4 milliseconds, which is not only acceptable, it's actually pretty good. Next up, I absolutely love these face buttons. I talked about it more in depth during the face button section of the video, but they are easier to hit and they have a nice tactile click without being noisy. They're just great. Bumpers and triggers also feel ergonomically great, are in a good position, and I think feel good. Also, cosmetically, I think this controller looks very good. In this white trim, which it does come in a black version as well, but in this white one, you get that contrast from the anti-friction rings around the analog sticks being that kind of brass or bronze, and I think that looks super classy. The only thing that would make this controller a little bit more handsome would be if they could white out the face buttons and D-pad as well, but that's just getting nitpicky at this point. Now, a huge pro is the fact that it does have Dolby Atmos. You don't need an activation code or anything. You just pop in a headset to the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, and you will automatically have Dolby Atmos engaged. If it's not engaged by default, I showed you how to go to the bottom right click and turn on spatial sound. And bringing all these pros together, the verdict is that for a $40 controller, this has an insane amount of value. You have Dolby Atmos built in, and also everything feels very premium. You have a good warranty, 1 year in North America, and everything just feels really well buttoned down. Face buttons are awesome. Analog sticks are incredibly high quality. So where can you buy this thing? Major vendors that sell gaming peripherals such as Best Buy and Walmart, as well as their manufacturer website and Amazon. These will all be linked in the description below. Peace. If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers. This information will reach in a system as well, which in turn helps me grow this little channel, which I do greatly appreciate. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, as well as honest gaming product reviews, keyboards, mice, headsets, controllers, mics, chairs, etc. There are some hefty exclusive discount codes found only in the description of my videos and only for the audience here at Gamer Heaven. Check out Into the AM for some of the sickest looking and most comfortable cloth to ever grace my gaming giblets. If you don't want to be scorching your corneas with harmful blue light, check out Gamer Advantage, the only blue light glasses on the market that look sexy and actually work. If you're looking for a custom controller that'll blow the competition's tits back, AIM definitively has the best bang for buck or price to performance when it comes to Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch controllers. Nope, they don't do Switch, but they do gaming mice. I said doo-doo. I have links to all my other platforms and socials in the description below. If you need a quick laugh or blast of gamer adrenaline, check my short form videos out at TikTok. To get in touch with myself and the Stallions and Stallionettes of Gamer Heaven, join the community Discord, and check me out at twitch.tv where I go live every other leap year on a blue moon if it falls into an odd calendar number, and my pH balance is on point. Just kidding, starting June I'm going to be live streaming a lot. Thanks for watching. This has been AK40 Kevin hosting Gamer Heaven, and I'll see you tomorrow because I upload daily. All the time. 60% of the time. Sometimes. Most of the time. Peace.